Good evening and welcome to First and 45 with Coach Fitzhill. I'm Drew Davis. Coach, it is interesting. The Bishop is not here yet, but he is on his way.
On his way.
We're kind of picking on him about what could be the holdup or whatever you called him. So I just want to say, I thought we were the elder statesmen. We needed those maps. But Bishop,
maybe it's because he's been preaching so hard. Because we know if he preaching 2 or 3 sermons a week,
that tail wagging arm gets exhausted. He's got to get a little bit of nap in there. But Bishop will be joining us soon. But Coach, we had a good weekend this weekend. I can't wait to dig into what went down and what we got working. And so let me start off with a little prayer, and then we'll jump in. Lord, we love you. Doing. We're thankful for the lives you're changing and the doors you're opening. We pray, Lord, that we will just walk through them boldly, that we will stand in the gap. Lord, there's a lot of crazy going on in our state, a lot of crazy going on the streets. Lord, we know that you got a plan for our lives. You got a plan for all these lives that are just not following after you, Lord, that are just chasing after the worldly pursuits. We know you want to change their trajectory. We know that you want to move them closer to you, Lord. I pray, Lord, that we'll be a piece of that puzzle. In your precious name, amen.
Amen.
And let me just kick off. As always, I like to talk about the why we do what we do. The hungry, 44 million people in the U.S. who face hunger. Arkansas continues to be the hungriest state in America. It's about the widow. We've got 24 million kids in Arkansas being raised in single-parent households. We're going to talk more about that here in a minute. It's about the orphan, 391,000 children in the U.S. living in the foster care, nearly 4,000 of them right here in Arkansas. And for a child aging out of foster care, 80% of them are going to have a child or be in prison within 2 years. 65% of them will experience homelessness. This is a contributing factor to what we talk about on a regular. It's about poverty. More than 38 million Americans living in poverty. 17,000 kids in Arkansas that are spending their summer homeless. They don't know where they're going to spend that night. It could be a friend. It could be a hotel. It could be anything. It's about addiction. Half of people over 12 have used illicit drugs. Over 40,000 people die from overdosing each and every year. This is something that's near and dear to our heart because we want to see these guys activated and serving back in their communities. It's about the prisoner. 2 million people in America currently incarcerated. The United States is leading the way in the total incarcerations in America, more than most other countries combined. And so for so many, this is kind of a lockout of society type situation, but we want to see it a step back into society situation. At every Arkansan, our vision is to see more people chasing their God-given dreams. And far too often, those dreams are sidelined because of the zip code you were born in more than anything else. And all these facts that I just talked about are contributing factors to one factor we have to change. The number one cause of death for a black male 0 to 44 is homicide. It's not car accidents, not cancer, not heart disease. It's homicide. And Coach, this weekend, we got to jump in at the Juvenile Detention Center. We had serve Saturday with so many of the churches across the state coming together to serve, but we took not only our church members, but we took a busload of special operatives.
Yeah.
Do you want to just kind of share a little bit about that crew that got to come with us?
Absolutely. We're our second football camp that we've had out there the last 2 years. It was something that really excited me last year, and went up on visiting. Speaking out there a couple of times, they just kept saying, Coach, when we're going to have next football camp? And I said, this summer we're going to do it again. But I was really waiting for our young men at Arkansas Baptist College to enroll, and just realized the impact that this place could have on them, and let them see how blessed they are and that they have opportunities to be at Arkansas Baptist College. Because at any time, we've both been to college, and sometimes it's woe me in college.
Right.
And so to let these young men and young ladies, which did the basketball camp for the Lady Buffaloes basketball camp, and the football players football camp, I just want to thank the coaches for taking a Saturday morning and coming out there and investing in the lives of these young people. And I've got some comments I'll start posting, but the impact that it had on our players was probably even more impactful than for the juveniles themselves. But that was the whole purpose of allowing them to touch these young people and give them hope. And then to, as I told them, recruit these young people to Arkansas Baptist College up on release and let them know that there is a place because a hopeless person is a dangerous person.
Absolutely.
And so, growing hope is how we define it. And to see these kids, the young boys and girls, not want us to leave. I mean, it was just, when it was time to eat, we're coming back, and when we were out there, Saturday 10 to 2 was our serve time that we were there at meeting at the church and driving out there. But it was probably I've been involved in a lot of things, but I must say this is in the top 3 most gratifying serve day that I've ever had Saturday.
It's so cool to me because starting out over there by Arkansas Baptist, I've heard you tell the story of Arkansas Baptist being established by freed slaves that were coming off the plantation, coming into the Little Rock area. And these young people, they wanted something better. And one of the biggest things in slavery was that this institution of uneducation, institution of keeping slaves held down because they couldn't read, couldn't write, couldn't communicate effectively in those worlds. And that was the dream. And when you came over 20 years ago to take over Arkansas Baptist because it was being shut down the first time, that was one of the things that you said, man, we're going back to the roots. This is a generation of young people that have been shut out of the education system. Their opportunities have been stripped from them. They've been held under the water, so to speak, and you created an opportunity. And
for those who don't normally get opportunities.
Exactly.
Which tied back into the 1884 coming off the plantation. And I said a couple of weeks ago that I'm inspired by the fact that the self-empowerment that I'm motivated by when I look at Old Main, the oldest building for educating African Americans in the state of Arkansas, built in 1893 from those removed from being in slavery, and understanding that they had an opportunity and didn't look at the obstacles, looked at the opportunities.
Right.
And it's easy for me to look at the obstacles rather than focus on the opportunities. And when each day, and I think about that, when I ride down Martin Luther King Drive and I think about the sacrifices of Dr. King and what he gave his life for others to have life better, I can't think of in my life today anything more purposeful that drives me is opportunities to bless kids who ordinarily wouldn't have an opportunity to be blessed. So we extended that to the young people who, like I said, the most what the Mr. Settle says, the most people they had to come to the facility. Never had this many people. So for those kids to see that, our serve team, Everett Canson, a recovery cook for what I know we had 400 hot dogs, you know what I'm saying? And pork chops.
Pork chops.
Yeah, and to see everybody enjoy being a part of that, understanding that we want to connect these young people to opportunities for them to pursue what I said, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is what Saturday was all about. And we just can't make that a one-time event. What we have to do is get consistent in building those relationships so we build that trust. So when it's time for those youth to get out of there, that they know, hey, Coach Hill said I could come over here. Pastor Drew said I had a job, when I get over here. All those things is what took place Saturday. And just to see the glow on their eyes because we made those children feel important.
Right. And I think what excites me is this kind of full circle experience. There were a couple of the kids that we had seen coming through what we were doing with Meta 24. But what was really cool was to watch this bus of these young people that you've spent the last few months really recruiting heavily out across the entire country of, hey, if you've wanted to go to college and you didn't think it was possible, we got a place for you. And that was who was on that bus. This group of young men and young women who otherwise wouldn't have had a chance were going on this mission to extend that same invitation to another group of people, to a group of kids that are currently incarcerated. And I don't know the backgrounds of a lot of the guys and gals that were on the bus, but I do know that there were some of them that were just kind of talking beforehand that identified with what was going on.
Absolutely.
That they looked at that and they're like, oh, this is a little close to home. This is a little bit dangerous. And when we look at so much of what's out there, what Satan is really trying to do is shut us down. He's trying to take our past. He's trying to take the systemic problems in our society. He's trying to take the divisiveness that's out there and tell us, hey, God can't use you. Yeah, I mean, you're useless, you're whatever. But these young people were coming into that experience, getting off that bus, and they were running skills and drills with these currently incarcerated kids. Not only the young men that were incarcerated, but the young women who were incarcerated. And they were challenging them upwards to step into something greater. And that was exciting to me because usually it's you and I that are kind of doing parts of that. This is another generation. And when I was kind of starting to kind of think through tonight, Peter came in, he says, hey, you need to talk about fatherlessness. And so I got 25 facts that I want to kind of throw out there over the next little bit as we kind of continue to talk about this. But when we look at incarceration and we look at fatherlessness, there's a huge correlation.
No question.
And then when you look at incarceration, you look at this is another group of fathers that are going to fall off because they're either incarcerated as juveniles or they're incarcerated as adults. And so the first one is 85% of youth in prison come from a fatherless home. 85%.
That's impressive. I mean, numbers don't lie.
Yeah, and that's from the U.S. Department of Justice. These are not facts that I just pull out of the air, make up, or whatever. That's the U.S. Department of Justice says 85% of youth in prison come from fatherless homes. So those young men and young women that we were working with, more than likely, the probability is that there wasn't a man leading their house.
Yeah.
Fatherless children are 20 times more likely to be incarcerated than those from two-parent households. And this is something that we've talked about, that what we've kind of worked hard to instill in our own children. But you look at the disadvantage so many of those kids have because of that. We talk about the disadvantages of race. We talk about the disadvantages of finances. We talk about the disadvantages of the community you grew up in. But one of the largest predictors is having a mom and a dad both actively involved in your life.
And I can't remember in one of the books that I referenced, but it says that regardless of what different social determinants, the fatherless womb is at the core of all of the problems that we're facing in our communities. Because if you go back and you look at how that father, particularly as we talk about this homicide epidemic, as that father has been replaced by whatever, okay, or he has as I said, if we want the neighbor to come back to the hood, the father must lead that movement. And because the father is not there, I mean, it's biblical, right? The father comes through, the blessing comes through the father. And when that's not there for that blessing to come, then you see the distractions that take place from young boys who don't have a father to model or to imitate.
Absolutely.
And that's raise up a child in the way he should go.
Yep.
That's the scripture.
And then when that example's not there, what happens?
Yep.
Hey, guys, it is first quarter here on First and 40. Hey guys, Drew here, and for the last 11 years, we've worked together to build the Arkansas Dream Center. And over those years, things have grown, opportunities have happened, but we've continued to focus on that mission of every Arkansan chasing their God-given dream. And for that very reason, our corporation is actually known as Every Arkansan Inc. We have two ministries that really work together in tandem to see that mission take place. We have the Arkansas Dream Center, which is going out and we're reaching out to the communities. We're in those communities with mobile trucks. We're doing after school, we're feeding, we're doing all those things you know us for doing. But in addition, we realize that the church is the answer to a lot of society's problems, and there's one on every corner. So we have City Serve that comes along the side of the church, and they provide the resources. They provide furniture and clothing and diapers and all these things to the local churches so they can reach out to their neighbors. And together, when those two start to mesh, we're going out and we're bringing the churches alongside of them, and we're equipping and we're resourcing those churches. We can truly empower the local church with the resources they need to strengthen relationships in their communities. And that's what our vision is for Every Arkansan Inc. And we're so glad you're a part of it. And we're back with First and 45 with Coach Fitzhill, and we're thankful the Bishop has made it. All the prayers that are out there, making sure the Bishop made it in, driving at 200 miles an hour. And he is here in the room with us, so we are thankful that he made it. We can continue. And I kind of continue to look at this. When you look at what we were just talking about before the break, some of the statistics, 70% of juveniles in state-operated institutions grew up in single-parent households. And so when we look at this, it just continues. It doesn't necessarily get any better when we look at this. And then you talk about the hand grenade effect when there's a shooting and all the other kind of fallout. This becomes a generational curse. Dad wasn't there, dad's not, or grandpa's not there. I mean, it just kind of trickles down. Youths from father-absent homes are more likely to become repeat offenders than those with fathers involved. And I look at that, and I remember the times that I'd get in trouble growing up, and you didn't want to do that again when dad got home.
No question.
Mom might say, when dad gets home, and you get a little nervous, but when dad got a hold of you, there wasn't a repeat offense.
Right. Well, God meant you have the nurturer, the leader, and you have that for a reason. God knows that you need that. So, and if one's not there, then just like you don't want all men. You need the nurturing mother, but you don't want all, particularly for a young man. And then you get the pattern, because with our daughters we have, they can see how a functional family is supposed to be, as God described it. There's a lot of different definitions. We're talking about the Holy Spirit and how God has ordained for this family structure to be there. We love everybody, but we're doing it God's way.
Absolutely. And I mean, think about it. You don't want to drive a car with half the tires flat. No question. You're not going to expect and think you're going someplace. Exactly. You need everything working and intact, running together to get to where you need to get. Children in father-absent homes are 4 times more likely to be poor, which increases vulnerability to criminal behavior. And I think that's one of those things that a lot of people will kind of question. Well, so many of the young people that I've seen steal, they don't start out stealing cars.
No.
They start out stealing snacks.
Yep.
It's not what a lot of people think. These kids aren't just jumping into this. It's out of necessity in a lot of ways. I look at the fights and stuff that we experienced in the early days of the Dream Center when we started it. A lot of it had to do with hunger.
Yep.
When a child is hungry, all they think about is, where am I going to get this filling? Where am I going to get this need met? Where am I going to get this hunger to go away? And they do stupid stuff to get there, but they become hangry.
Right.
When we look at the kids that are currently incarcerated, they're incarcerated for a plethora of reasons, but none of those kids started out thinking, oh, I'm going to go to juvie.
Right.
I'm going to get incarcerated for this. They started out, as Satan kind of does, just a little bit of deceit. And all of a sudden they were going down that path. I think the other one that scares me to death is fatherless children are twice as likely to drop out of school. And when they drop out of school, that's a huge predictor of later incarceration. And I can't remember the stat that you share all the time. And so I'm going to let you do it. But on currently college enrolled students, I can't remember what the stat
University
is.
of Cal Berkeley stated that in a study that only 5% of Black males who enroll in college this year, will be involved in the criminal justice system for criminal behavior. So that's saying the big piece is to get them enrolled, because if you got 100, just say 3,000 or whatever, then of those that enroll, then only 5% of those that enroll will be involved in a criminal in committing a crime. So when I went to Arkansas Baptist College, and that's why we're working backwards now with what we're doing with some other education initiatives. Right. But there's also a study that says that 70% of Black males who do not complete high school will face a prison sentence before they're 35. Okay. So now that's an issue that must be addressed, that if you're a dropout, you can't even get to that percentage. So now that's why the GED program at Arkansas Baptist College, I recruited Premier High School as a platform, educational platform for those who were challenged in a normal setting. That's why Meta 24 will be helping us starting this fall in integrating that into the workforce village that we're talking about. We're going to pursue, because every college is not for everybody. Okay. Right. However, understanding what entrepreneurship, and we're calling it skills to pay the bills from K through 13, that if we can focus on that for this 2% population that's often that is responsible for over 50% of the homicides, and understand this demographic, and by serving this demographic, that's why we went to the juvenile detention center this weekend, because you presented the data, said the Department of Justice said that 85% of those students will recidivate in 5 years upon release, with the average prison sentence of 12 years. So what I'm saying is that we have to, that's part of what I call, the rehabilitation process. Okay. And then as they get out, we're diverting them from going back by having these intentional programs for them that we said, okay, where are you going to go for your housing? We got a place for you to live. Okay, where are you going to go for education? We do it. So now we rehabilitate those students while after they've been resuscitated in the juvenile justice system, to give them a game plan to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. But you can't just ask a person to come out who hadn't been trained. You just mentioned it a while ago that very seldom, if you go out and steal a car, you've led up to that behavior. If you shoot somebody, you've led up to that behavior. So if you don't have something diverting that behavior to something positive, then we get these long-term sentences for these violent crimes, for attempted murder and murder.
Right.
And there are some kids in there for that.
And I mean, I look at, we had, I'm not real sure exactly what happened, but there was some youth activity going on this weekend in downtown, and someone started popping off rounds. And our city's solution is they're like, oh, we need to work on a curfew. And when we look at that, those kids that were out there acting a fool, they had nothing better to do with their night than to be out there acting a fool. We have got to look at that and say, okay, we can't legislate ourselves out of this. We got to legislate out of necessity, but man, what are the alternatives?
Yep.
What in this case, man, you're not going to make it in a traditional school setting. What's an alternative for that? You're not going to make it going to college. Man, what's an alternative for that? When I look at it, because we have a lot of buildings, I pay a whole heck of a lot of HVAC repairmen. They're not doing too bad.
No. Plumbers,
electricians. I mean, there are a lot of trades that are excellent for getting people from poverty to the middle class to the upper class. Yep. It's not.
In fact, one banker told me, I was talking to him. He said when he looked at the bank accounts of the people who doing the trades, he said he said they have a lot of money in the bank.
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
I mean, because half those trades, no one wants to do.
Right.
Because they look down on it and they say, oh, this or that. But it's all about paying those bills and about putting that money in the bank. And when you start looking at that, this is the thing that we want so many of these young people to realize. It's like, guys, there is a place in this world where you can be successful.
No question.
There's a place that God's got for you that you can be chasing after everything that he's got for you. And this next one is substance abuse. 75% of adolescent patients in chemical abuse centers come from fatherless homes. And this is one of the things that was really fun for me this weekend because I stuck around the food trailer. We were cooking, we were prepping. All the guys and gals that were manning that station came from our recovery program.
Yep.
They were these exact same individuals that went down that path of substance abuse. They've gotten clean and they've looked at that and said, okay, how can I serve back? How can I give back? And we look at Lieutenant Dan, we look at his wife was over there. I mean, we look at all these recovery guys and gals, and we've got a place for them to serve back. Same thing we're talking about with these young people that have been incarcerated. We've got a place for them to serve back. Peter was talking about one of the young girls that he got to talk to when they were doing the basketball program. And he was just talking to her about why she was there. And she just kind of started sharing. She started being abused when she was very young. And then the culmination of it was she was raped by a sibling and had a baby. And all of a sudden, the necessity of other things took her down a path of basically violence and other things. And you look at that and it's like, she was a baby. She did not have a chance. And all she was trying to do was survive after some of those things happened. And so many people look at that, and this young girl's life could be completely shut down for story, just like these recovery guys, where she can come back and she can make something great out of her life. And I know that's what God wants, no question. Regardless of what's going on. I mean, no father in the home, substance abuse. I mean, you look at youth in fatherless homes are more than twice as likely to join a gang. There's this craving for this structure of what God created. A man and a woman leaving a home. So many of these young people have missed That's where I got excited with the church, was the- which was the answer to so many of our problems. And we're going to keep talking about this. Don't worry, we got a whole another half an hour to go. We got the bishop back in the house, so it's going to be smooth. But hey, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Don't take a nap. Don't take a nap. We'll be right back.
As a former football coach, knowing the engagement that takes place on the football field, the basketball courts, the track, baseball. As a former football coach, knowing the engagement that takes place on the football field, the basketball courts, the track, baseball, outside of extracurricular activity, META is the best academic curriculum I've seen for the oftentimes socially challenged student. And glad to have a pilot program going here now with Hamilton Learning Academy, as well as juvenile detention facility, to inspire, grow hope to a population of kids who sometimes don't believe that in the United States that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is for them. And so this opportunity allows them to see that, to feel that, and to engage in that, and to leave here thinking that I can do something that maybe they didn't think they could do prior to enrolling in the META 24 program.
All right, who's the CFO? Yeah. Come on up. Give the CFO a round of applause. All right, for the marketing promotion team.
My name is Shania, and I make this pillow. It's a baby pillow for babies. It can be for a boy or for a girl. It's saying, be what you want to be. I really want to make a side hustle of this and give pillows to the hospital so you don't get good rest. So soft pillows like this.
In the future, I want to 3D print some stuff that will help us in the world. I would love to print 3D houses to help architects build real houses, because there's a lot of people in the world that homeless right now, and I feel like if I'm able to print 3D houses, I feel like architects can make more houses faster.
And we're back with First and 45 with Coach Fitzhill, the second half, and Coach Pastor Beaver, good job on the first half until he started talking about me.
Yeah, is it yawning over there? Is it yawning? My guy, is he yawning over there?
He's been getting that sleep out of his eyes.
Yeah, get that sleep. Wipe your eyes.
You know what? Nothing like a good nap, man. Especially when it's really
that's
super
good.
hot.
That's good sleep.
Yes, sir.
When you can do it, because it doesn't happen. I mean, you have to be for your body to do that. Particularly when you're going a lot and just shut down. That means you're getting some rest. Yeah. Hey guys, I want to Peter, who's really doing a great job for every Arkansan team in recording and getting these life experiences. But he shared my TED Talk that I did a few years back, and I shared about a young man that I was recruiting in Richmond, California, and as I mentioned, and that experience came back to me from the movie Coach Carter in Richmond, California. And as I walked into that school and I saw this young man's highlight film, And I just, oh Lord, I got to get this guy. He gonna keep my job, you know. And the coach told me that I couldn't recruit him. And, you know, instantly I thought, well, he's going to Stanford, you know, because he got 1,600 on SAT or something. Or I said, nope, he's going to University of Southern California. Pete Carroll was down there building the program down, you know, in the Hollywood area, which Snoop Dogg and everybody was down there. So he said, no. I said, well, if anybody else in California, I'm going up against him. I can beat Cal. I can beat Fresno State. I mean, those kids are something, hey, in the game. And so finally, it was almost like pulling teeth. And he said, no, Coach, really don't waste your time. And I said, well, why do you not want me to recruit him? He said, he dropped his head and said, he can't read. Mm-hmm. And I said, but Coach, he's in the 12th grade. How did this happen? How did this young man go from 0 to 12 playing football? And I said, obviously he can learn because he's going the right way on tape, you know, but he was functionally illiterate. And so, but he said, so I said, well, what is he going to do? Is he going to graduate? And he didn't really have a response for that. Right. So, but he's a great athlete, can't read. So I said, so how's he going to get a job? I mean, so all these things just kind of triggered in my mind. And I said, will he be at practice this evening, or what is he going to get tutoring? And what I didn't mean put him off the team, but I'm saying, are you working with him as hard on developing his literacy skills as you are on developing his football skills? And because I said, if not, that's mental abuse, that you're taking a person and you're not developing their brain, but you're developing their body. So you're abusing the brain.
Right.
Okay. And so I said, how does this work? And I was really baffled because I'd never seen that, even though I may have heard of it. That experience just really rocked my world. And so as I was traveling back across the Bay Bridge from Richmond going back to San Jose, I became totally discontent that this was going on within these urban communities. And so when you see these things that this coach was really cultivating this young man, he loved him. Right? But I was confused as how was he going to help him when he couldn't read, which really, when I came to Arkansas Baptist and you realize I started the Delta Classic for literacy, right. There's raising money in the Delta that there were 13, all of that kind of came out of this experience. Then I had the Literacy Classic in California, Doug Williams, the largest sellout of San Jose. All of that came from that experience because I started thinking that's a fundamental issue. And to your point about Arkansas Baptist College, I read one book and one book was talked about that being, you know, whipped or not being allowed to learn to read was the greatest injustice that he felt that took place. Because as long as you can't read, you have to be led. And so by keeping slaves illiterate, they had to always depend on somebody else to help them. They couldn't be empowered themselves. And that's why the Bible is so important. The Bible means nothing to you if you can't read it.
Well, I think another great example of that is there have been religious denominations that have read the Bible in other languages to keep the lay people enslaved because they couldn't really read and understand the Bible. And I think anytime that you can hold a group of people back, you can control a group
no
of
question.
people. Yeah. And that's something that when we start to look at this group of young people, they fall for everything they see on TikTok. They believe everything they see on social media about these untruths and all that. We're leading a group of people astray, and we are failing them in building them into the people they could be.
You know, and so when you take a person, this was 2001, 2002 season, and I realized what's going on in this young man's life. So how will this person, he couldn't fill out an application at 7-Eleven because he can't read. Think about this is when I really started looking at it. So what is he going to do? He can't pass his driver's test because he can't read. So to understand how a person is depowered by a lack of literacy really led me to what I'm doing. And when Arkansas Baptist College gave me an opportunity, I realized, okay, how are we going to reattach this to the original mission of this institution by giving an opportunity and to remediate kids who have been passed on. And that's why I went and got a GED program that I've seen the GED programs. And listen, if you know anybody out there that need a GED program, it's free. Okay. Sure. And so once you get a GED, then you can access federal money. Understand this. You can't receive your Pell Grant and a loan to go to school until you have a high school diploma. Okay. But check this out. They give you, if you go to prison, you're mandated. You're mandated to go to school. Uh-huh. But you're not mandated to go to school if you drop out outside of 18. But if you go in prison at 19, you got to get a GED.
No, we're not advocating going to prison.
No, we're not.
That's just sad.
It's just sad. It's bad. No, I'm just saying. So how are we going? That's backwards. And to the point is that if kids did not drop out, right. All right, and then they graduated high school, only 5% of those would be involved in the criminal justice system during that academic year. But those who don't, according to the study that they did to sample, you're looking at nearly 70% going to prison. And I can't remember the age group. It says, it says cumulative risk imprisonment by age 30 to 34 for men born between 1940 to 49 and 1975 and 79 by race and education. It said that during this time, a high school dropout has nearly a 70% chance of being in prison by his mid-30s. Now, just think about that now. I know I said that, but I wanted to make sure I had that right because that number was so high, I didn't want somebody to come in here and say, are you serious? That's what the data says. So that study ran from the 40s to the 70s. And so why is that? Because that's when, after the 70s, is when our prison number spiked. Remember, we've gone from 300,000 in the early 80s to over 2 million in the 21st century. Why? There's a direct correlation to elementary school suspension, high school dropout, and juvenile and prison incarceration. That's it. So if we're going to change the narrative, we have to turn off the faucet. You can ready to say something, Bishop.
I was just going to say, just to your point, what you're talking about earlier, when you're talking to the coach, oftentimes we deal with the what. We arrest because of the what. We punish because of the what. But the underlying issues is the why. And that's what you tapped into. Yeah. And I think it's just important for persons to realize if we don't tap into why, then the what will continue to multiply.
Absolutely. That's really good.
85% of juveniles in the court system are functionally illiterate. This is Department of Ed.
There you go.
70% of inmates in the U.S. cannot read above fourth grade. 2 out of 3 students who cannot read proficiently by the end of the fourth grade will end up in jail or on welfare, according to the Annie E. Casey Foundation.
So
it's a death sentence.
It's a death sentence. I'm telling you, that's why. Let's go back as we, think about our first 1,000 days. That's the kickoff of it. Okay. That's what we're saying. So and that's the deal, that we have to eat this elephant one bite at a time, because in my mind, if you're in combat and it's violent, that's what you call suppression. So you have to shoot back to survive. Okay. So you can't be worried about a strategic plan when somebody's shooting at you. Right. You got to say, okay, hey, look, you shoot and I run back here until we can get reinforcements. And so that's what's going on, because when you see these things happening, you see these kids, I bet you, with the gunfire and all the things that's happening in our community right now, these kids are not engaged in anything. All right. They have no hope for a future. So that's fun. These kids, you think on Saturday night, what about the kids playing AAU basketball? They're traveling, they're engaged. Well, these kids are not that, because why? The profile says of the data that, I'm going to say with a great degree of certainty, just hypothetically speaking, profiling what I've done through research of First and 45 with the Derek Olivier Research Institute, is that 40 to 50% of those kids had been suspended. Okay. And I'll say that normally it's 80 to 85, but I'm going to say you have good kids in there too, because everybody wants to be where the action is. So I'm not going to the whole number. I'm going to say 50. That's how they start pulling others. Let's go do this. And then those other people don't want to be left out. And so, hey, my son said it in here with Turtle. Had it not been for somebody who was pulling him from that and off that piece that says, don't jump off the porch. When you go, when the violence piece is talking about the young man say, we really don't want to do this, but we didn't have anybody keeping us from doing it. And so when somebody came by and said, let's go, we jumped off the porch. Well, that's what probably happened the other night with those young people. Somebody said, what we're doing, we're going down here and we're going to create havoc. And so it's important that we understand, as you said, the why, because this is the what, as you mentioned, and we're going to talk more about that in the fourth quarter. Social determinants that just continually perpetuate themselves as birthing this homicide virus. Hey, stay tuned. We're going to try to get to Fred before we get another nap. We got me, my man, Pastor Drew. We're going to be waving the white towel. We'll be right back for the fourth quarter.
Black men have so many different problems, so many different issues. Homicide rate, high incarceration rate, fatherless homes. What is America going to do about it?
What are we going to do about it? Yeah, what are we going to do about it? When I say we, I'm talking to black men. I'm asking us, what are we going to do about issues that negatively impact black men and boys to a greater degree than other demographics? Everybody knows about the homicide epidemic in this country regarding black men and boys. While comprising only 6% of the nation's population, we account for 50% of the nation's homicide victims. So what are we going to do about it? Here's another disturbing reality. While making up only 6% of the nation's population, we're about 40% of the nation's prison population. In fact, 1 in 3 black males are projected to go to jail in their lifetime. Again, I ask, what are we going to do about it? Collectively, black men have the means to solve these problems. We just don't have the mind to do so. And means without the mind is meaningless, brother. It doesn't mean a thing.
Okay, we're back with First and 45. And Coach, listen, talk about this weekend. We got some footage. I got more footage. Giving more footage. It's over. I got more than 15 minutes worth of footage. So you're going to have to really bring us to the forefront of what happened this weekend that really focuses on impacting your life.
Well, understanding sometimes young people don't have a motivation to dream is what this weekend was all about. And I'm hoping that you and I can develop. We got a call from KLP today that talked about the matter. I thought that was encouraging that they're looking at different paradigm for learning. And that definitely, I'm supposed to talk to her next week. And I want to try to pursue bringing the not once a week that those kids can come and spend all day. For those getting ready to transition out, so we would have an opportunity for them to plan on something, maybe dual enroll. Something that we have to do. We got to do something that's going to be able to help. And so it was really, Bishop, about exposure for both populations, our students and the juveniles who are currently serving time, to give them hope. For them to be able to dream, to pursue life, liberty, and their happiness in their life. And man, it was just an incredible, as I mentioned earlier, the Bishop, it's been one of the most gratifying serving opportunities that the Lord has blessed me to be a part of. And one reason, as I look at this, the root causes and social issues that's birthing this homicide epidemic and incarceration among black males particularly, what I found, there were 7 core issues, and we were trying to address that by exposing these opportunities with this population. We've talked about this before, and we'll continue to do this, but teenage pregnancy and poverty, I call that the number one because of the things that are birthed out of those conditions and those situations. And the second thing is, you just mentioned it, being father, the fatherlessness involvement and no role models, and how Black children from single parent household are twice as likely to commit crimes as Black children from a family where a father is present. Let's think about that. Now, and nearly 70% of juveniles in state reform institutions come from fatherless home. You just mentioned that. So one stacks on the other. It's like a staircase to a cliff that you're getting ready to fall off. Okay. Now, we're looking at teenage pregnancy and poverty. Okay. Then you don't have a father to help you overcome those issues. So it just keeps stepping up. So the higher you keep going from being able to achieve life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, what happens in that? You have a trauma-filled early childhood experiences. And what it says, the National Task Force established by the U.S. Attorney General's office reported that 2 out of 3 children in the U.S. have experienced some level of violence, and 90% of juvenile offenders have experienced a traumatic event as a child. So that's what you're just talking about, right? Yeah. There it is. So our kids, when you're out there, we understand the challenges that what you face. So now we're still building that stair step. So we said teenage pregnancy in poverty, okay? No fatherhood involvement and no positive role models, which then triggers trauma-filled early childhood experiences. Then you know what comes next? Elementary school suspension, which we're seeing now. So now we're still stepping. Well, now what happens when we see this early childhood, this elementary school suspension? So they're suspending them back to the trauma-filled experiences, back to the non-father community, back to the parent, the environment that they were born in, and say, hey, this child need help. But now you're sending them back to this.
You only should expect for it to get worse.
That's exactly right. So look, what Drew, like we have a vacation Bible school in the Dream Center, that's a place of refuge.
Absolutely. And I saw pictures last night. It was a fun place of refuge.
That's what I'm saying.
Going on again tonight and tomorrow night.
Right. And so now, rather than if you had a child there, it has to be something that's just really powerful. I mean, detrimental to suspend a kid from elementary school. I just, in my mind, listen, I visited one school. I'm not gonna call the name while I was on the state board. And so I walk in to school with the superintendent visiting. So this little young man sitting over there in the 5th grade, bawling, just crying. So I stopped everybody. I said, hey, what's wrong? What's going on with the little man here? What's going on? Well, he's bad. He's got to go home and he's disruptive. And I said, okay. So, now, you know how my heart, I'm getting anxiety. Right. I said, well, so 5th grade, we don't have anybody here that can work with this child. So we'd leave and go do the tour of school. I come back, he's still there. I said, so, and I said, what's the issue still is how are we going to help? Well, nobody can come get him. His mom says she can't get off work. And so my question, I looked at the superintendent, I said, and we're suspending him. 5th grade, mom can't get off work. But so where's he? And I said to my deal, so where is he going to go? Who's going? So if mom has, to come get him from work, upset, my child has required for me to come get him. I'm on an hourly job.
Yep.
Okay. And my boss saying I have to go get my child. When that mother gets that child, she's not going to be happy.
Nope.
That child's going to have to go home and raise himself.
Yep. Which, I mean, as a mandated reporter, we call that child abandonment.
Yeah.
We're forcing.
Yeah, no question. And so now here's what the next step comes to is when we test him, we found out because he has all these issues, the child is illiterate. Back to the point. Yep. So now we keep stepping to these things that's called
your low literacy, then it's academic failure, then it's school disengagement, then it's truancy, then it's crime, and then it's incarceration.
That's what you got.
We're dealing with the what?
Yeah, exactly right.
And we're not dealing with why. And it's man, if we don't deal with the why, I'm just hearing you. You know, it's interesting that even the coach that you were talking about, high profile, professional, okay. He was doing the right thing in terms of dealing, because you got to deal with what is like we talk about all the time. We don't, man, we're not advocating that murder is a good thing. They got to be punished,
right?
But you got to deal with the fact that what leads up to that murder, what's lead up to these crimes. You talk about the knives, you talk about the gun. Something is leading up to that.
Yeah.
And if you don't deal with what leads up to that, and this is why we got to save our children now.
No question.
Well, I mean, Proverbs 1:5. Let the wise listen and add to their learning. Literacy opens up that door to wisdom. It opens it to opportunity, opens it to freedom. But illiteracy, the opposite, it's a chain to keep a person in confinement and in poverty. And when we look at that, it's like we talk about the land of opportunity. We talk about in God we trust. We talk about all these great things as a country. But somewhere along the lines with this group of young people, we're forgetting exactly what in the world that is.
Well, here's and this is why it's even so important. We got the 2-minute warning at the first45.com is recent studies of violence in the United States reveal that guns were responsible for 80% of the deaths of Black children. Now, I just want y'all to hear that.
80%.
80%. So when I'm sitting here and understanding there is no other population like that, because this is a stark difference when comparing deaths to white children, where less than 25% of the deaths were related to gun violence. Now, 80, Fred, and 25. Mm-hmm. That's why we talk about this. So understanding that these children, by your zip code, by the zone, by these social determinants, by these factors, you have a 60 percentage point greater possibility of losing your life to gun violence based on these social factors that we have to find a way to solve. We cannot look at this and keep saying, well, that's just how it is. No, it hadn't always been this way. That's the thing that I want to make sure as we close. It wasn't like this way before 1960. Right. Homicide was not the leading cause of black males aged 1 to 44 until after 1970. And those are the factors that we're going to be focusing on as we move forward in the fall to bringing these issues to the surface so that we can save our sons now. So, hey, it's going to be on and popping. It's fact, not fiction. This will be the non-fiction show. So we hope you'll join in with us. And if you have some facts that you want me to talk about, hey, just DM me and give them to me. And I promise you, we'll definitely bring it up. We want to make sure that we're bringing this. What happened this weekend? We balled out. God showed up and showed out in a mighty way. And we're going to be going back. And we're going to be, I just thank God for that opportunity to be a blessing to these kids. Would you close out the word of prayer, Bishop? Thank you for tonight. Thank you just for the work that Coach you and others are doing in the community, God, to make a difference. And help us, God, to even expose the God, even the more that others are doing again. We can save our young boys. It's in your great name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.